The Empire notices Earth. The Dravixian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 300 years, and in all that time, no species had ever made them bleed. Their armada moved through space like a disease, spreading across star systems with methodical precision. Worlds fell without resistance. Civilizations that tried to fight learned quickly that defiance meant extinction. The Dravixians didn't negotiate. They didn't compromise. They arrived, they conquered, and they moved on. Commander Varric stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, the flagship of the Northern Fleet, and watched another world surrender. The planet below was called Tezhari Prime, home to a species of avian traders who had once prided themselves on their neutrality. That neutrality meant nothing now. The orbital defense platforms had been vaporized in the first volley. The planetary shield had collapsed under sustained bombardment. Now the leaders of Tezhari Prime broadcast their surrender across every channel, begging for mercy. Varric didn't respond. Mercy was a resource the Empire didn't waste. Dispatch the occupation forces, he said, his voice flat. Standard protocol. Disarm the population. Seize all manufacturing facilities. Execute anyone who resists. His second officer nodded and relayed the orders. Within minutes, thousands of Dravixian soldiers would descend on the cities below. Within hours, Tezhari Prime would be another name on the Empire's endless list of conquered worlds. Varric turned away from the viewport. He had witnessed this scene dozens of times. It never changed. Conquest was routine now, mechanical. The galaxy had learned to fear the Empire, and fear made everything easier. But then something unusual happened. A communication officer approached, his expression uncertain. Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from High Command. They're ordering the fleet to halt all current operations and redirect to a new target. Varric's eyes narrowed. The Empire didn't alter mission parameters without reason. What target? The officer hesitated. A planet called Earth. It's located in the Orion Arm, Sector 794. The system is designated Sol. Varric accessed the data on his command console. The file was thin, barely more than preliminary survey information. Earth was a Class M world with a breathable atmosphere, abundant water, and a single sentient species. Population, 8 billion. Technological level, pre-interstellar. No warp capability. No energy shields. No planetary defense grid. It was, by every metric, insignificant. Why does High Command care about this world? Varric asked. The officer pulled up additional data. A survey probe detected unusual electromagnetic signatures in the outer system. High Command believes the humans may possess resources valuable to the Empire. They want the planet secured before any rival powers take interest. Varric studied the information. Humans. He had never heard of them. They hadn't made contact with any known civilization. They had no alliances, no treaties, no place in the galactic order. They were isolated, primitive, and utterly unaware of how the galaxy truly worked. They were easy prey. How many ships does High Command want deployed? Varric asked. 500 warships. The entire Northern Fleet. Varric paused. 500 warships for a pre-interstellar civilization. That was excessive. The Empire usually sent a dozen cruisers to deal with worlds like this. Even that was overkill. This seems unnecessary, Varric said carefully. A world with no space fleet cannot resist us. We could take it with 50 ships. The officer nodded. High Command agrees. But they want overwhelming force to ensure a swift victory. They don't want any complications. Varric understood. The Empire had grown complacent, perhaps, but it wasn't careless. If there was even a remote possibility of resistance, High Command would crush it before it became a problem. That was how the Empire survived. That was how it thrived. Very well, Varric said. Set course for Earth. Maximum speed. I want the fleet in position within 10 cycles. The officer saluted and returned to his station. Around the bridge, the crew moved with practiced efficiency, inputting coordinates, calculating jump trajectories, preparing the fleet for another conquest. Varric looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness, a small blue world called Earth continued its existence, unaware that its fate had already been decided. Its people lived their lives, built their cities, fought their petty wars, never imagining that something far worse was coming. They would learn soon enough. The Dravixian Empire had conquered thousands of worlds. Earth would be no different. Varric allowed himself a small, cold smile. This would be over quickly. The humans would see the Armada appear in their skies, and they would realize how powerless they were. They would surrender or they would die. Either way, Earth would become another trophy in the Empire's collection. It always ended the same way. He turned from the viewport and walked to his command chair. Around him, the bridge hummed with quiet activity. The fleet was already preparing to jump. 500 warships, each capable of glassing a continent, would soon converge on a single, defenseless planet. What Varric didn't know, what no one in the Dravixian Empire could possibly know, was that Earth had been watching the stars for a very long time. Humanity had listened to the silence and heard the whispers of danger. They had prepared for this moment with a paranoia born from centuries of conflict with themselves. And hidden in the cold darkness beyond Neptune, something massive waited. Something that would change everything. Humanity's secret. The message arrived at United Earth Command at 0400 hours, and within minutes, every high-ranking officer in the solar system was awake. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the war room deep beneath Geneva, staring at the holographic display that dominated the center of the chamber. The image showed the outer edge of the solar system, where humanity's network of deep space sensors had detected something impossible to ignore. 500 ships. All of them massive. All of them heading toward Earth. Confirmed? Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. Colonel Marcus Webb nodded grimly. Confirmed, Admiral. Long-range scans picked them up 2 hours ago. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel just beyond the Kuiper Belt. Current trajectory puts them at Earth's orbit in 72 hours. Chen felt her jaw tighten. 72 hours. 3 days to prepare for an invasion force that could obliterate every city on the planet. Around the war room, dozens of officers worked at their stations, pulling data, coordinating defensive measures, and trying very hard not to panic. Chen understood the feeling. For 50 years, humanity had feared this moment. For 50 years, they had prepared for hostile first contact. Now it was here. What do we know about them? Chen asked. Webb pulled up additional data on the holographic display. Analysis of their ship signatures matches records from the Dravixian Empire. They control roughly 40% of the known galaxy. Extremely militaristic. Zero diplomatic outreach. Every species they've encountered has either surrendered or been exterminated. Chen studied the fleet formation. It was methodical, precise, designed for overwhelming force. These weren't explorers. They were conquerors. Have they attempted communication? She asked. None. They're maintaining radio silence. Based on their trajectory and speed, we believe they intend to achieve orbital superiority before making any demands. Chen nodded slowly. That was smart. Take control of the high ground, then dictate terms. It was exactly what humanity would do in their position. But humanity wasn't in their position. Status of Leviathan? Chen asked quietly. The room went silent. Every officer turned to look at her. Webb hesitated, then pulled up a new display. This one showed the outer solar system, far beyond Neptune, in a region of space so dark and empty that nothing should exist there. But something did. Leviathan is operational, Webb said. Captain Cade reports all systems at full readiness. Singularity containment is stable. Weapons arrays are charged. He's awaiting your orders. Chen stared at the display. Out there, hidden in the void, was humanity's greatest secret. The one weapon they had spent decades building, funded by every nation on Earth, constructed in absolute secrecy by engineers who would never receive recognition for their work. Project Leviathan. When humanity had first detected signs of intelligent life beyond Earth, the response hadn't been celebration. It had been fear. The universe was vast, and humanity was young. If other civilizations existed, there was no guarantee they would be friendly. History had taught humanity a brutal lesson: when two civilizations met, the weaker one usually didn't survive. So humanity had prepared. They hadn't built a fleet. Building hundreds of warships would take centuries and resources Earth didn't have. Instead, they had focused everything on a single vessel. One ship, designed not to fight fair battles, but to end them. Leviathan was 3 kilometers long, powered by twin singularities contained in quantum-stabilized cores. Its hull was layered with metamaterials that could absorb energy weapon fire and redirect it back at attackers. Its primary weapon was a graviton lance capable of tearing apart molecular bonds at the atomic level. It carried no crew quarters for thousands of soldiers, no diplomatic facilities, no medical bays for prisoners. It was built for one purpose: survival through annihilation. And it was commanded by Captain Aaron Cade, a man who had spent 20 years training for a war that might never come. Until now. Open a secure channel to Leviathan, Chen ordered. Webb nodded and worked the controls. A moment later, the holographic display shifted, showing the face of Captain Cade. He was in his mid-40s, with sharp features and calm, calculating eyes. He didn't look nervous. He looked ready. "Admiral," Cade said. "I assume you're calling about our visitors." "They'll be here in 72 hours, Chen said. 500 warships. No communication. No warning. They're coming to take Earth, Captain." Cade nodded slowly. "I've been monitoring their approach. They're overconfident. They think we're defenseless." "We are defenseless," Chen said bluntly. "Earth has orbital defense platforms and a few hundred atmospheric fighters. Against 500 capital ships, we'd last maybe an hour." "Then it's a good thing they don't know about me," Cade replied. Chen allowed herself a thin smile. "What's your assessment?" Cade pulled up tactical data on his end. "Their fleet formation is standard Dravixian doctrine. Heavy cruisers in the vanguard, carriers in the center, support vessels on the flanks. They're designed to overwhelm planetary defenses through sheer firepower. But they're slow, and they're predictable. Can you stop them?" Cade was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Leviathan wasn't designed to stop invasions, Admiral. It was designed to make invasions irrelevant. If they come to Earth expecting easy prey, I'll show them what humanity does to predators." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. She had read the classified reports on Leviathan's capabilities. She had seen the simulations. She knew what the ship could do. But knowing and seeing were two different things. "Rules of engagement?" Cade asked. Chen took a deep breath. This was the moment. Once she gave the order, there was no going back. Humanity would reveal itself to the galaxy not as explorers or diplomats, but as killers. But if they didn't fight, they would die. "Weapons free, Captain," Chen said. "If they enter the inner system, you are authorized to engage with lethal force. Show them that Earth is not prey." Cade's expression didn't change. "Understood, Admiral." Leviathan out. The transmission ended. The war room fell silent again. Webb stepped closer to Chen. "Do you think he can do it? One ship against 500? Chen stared at the holographic display, at the tiny marker that represented Leviathan, hiding in the dark. "I don't know," she said honestly. But if anyone can, it's him. Far beyond Neptune, in the cold silence of deep space, Captain Aaron Cade sat in the command chair of Leviathan and watched the enemy fleet approach. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply waited. The storm was coming. And humanity was ready to meet it. The Empire notices Earth. The throne room of the Dravixian Empire stretched wider than most cities, its obsidian walls carved from a single asteroid. Supreme Commander Vexhar stood before the holographic star map, his 4 arms crossed behind his scaled back. Each point of light represented a conquered world, and for 300 years, that number had only grown. "Show me the new discovery," he commanded. The map zoomed past 1,000 star systems until it reached an unremarkable yellow sun at the galaxy's edge. A blue and green planet spun slowly in the projection, its single moon casting shadows across primitive continents. "Earth," his intelligence officer said. "Population, 8 billion. Technology level, pre-interstellar. They've barely reached their nearest planet with crude chemical rockets. No energy shields. No plasma weapons. Their strongest military assets are nuclear fission bombs that couldn't scratch our hull plating." Vexhar's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. 8 billion slaves for our factories. How long until the fleet arrives? 3 cycles, Supreme Commander. Admiral Korthax requests 500 ships for the conquest. 500. Vexhar turned, his black eyes reflecting the hologram's light. For a world that hasn't even left its own system. Send 50. We have real threats to handle elsewhere. The intelligence officer hesitated. "Supreme Commander, our scans detected unusual energy readings from their outer system. Something near their 8th planet. Probably a malfunction in their primitive satellites." Vexhar waved dismissively. 50 ships. Tell Korthax if he can't conquer a pre-interstellar world with 50 dreadnoughts, I'll feed him to the void worms myself. The officer bowed and left, but something nagged at him. The energy readings hadn't looked like malfunctions. They'd looked deliberate. Focused. Like something was being hidden. On Earth, the lights of New York City glowed against the night sky as Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the United Nations Emergency Assembly. The room held representatives from every nation, their faces grave as they watched the footage on the main screen. A Dravixian fleet, recorded by humanity's deep space probes, systematically destroying a peaceful world called Kepler 442b. "They're coming," Chen said simply. "Our long-range sensors detected their scout drones near Jupiter yesterday. Based on their pattern of conquest, we have perhaps 3 weeks before the main fleet arrives." The Russian delegate leaned forward. "Then we activate Leviathan?" "Not yet." General Marcus Hayes of the United States Space Force stood up. "If we reveal our hand too early, they'll call for reinforcements. We need them to think we're helpless. Let them come with whatever force they're sending. Then we show them what humanity has been building for the last 30 years. The Chinese representative nodded slowly. "The recordings from Kepler 442b show their tactics. They demand surrender, glass one city as an example, then land occupation forces. We could evacuate Shanghai, let them destroy it." "No." The voice came from the back of the room. Captain Aaron Cade stepped into the light, his uniform bearing the insignia of the Earth Defense Coalition. At 35, he was young for such a command, but his eyes held the weight of someone who'd been preparing for this moment his entire life. "We don't sacrifice a single human city. We've run 10,000 simulations. We know their psychology. They expect fear. We give them defiance." "Captain Cade is right," Dr. Chen said. "The Dravixians have conquered through intimidation for centuries. They've never faced a species that knew they were coming. That prepared. That refused to break." The Indian delegate raised her hand. "And if Leviathan fails?" Cade's expression didn't change. "It won't. But if it does, we have Prometheus Station, the Mars Defense Grid, and 47 fusion missile platforms hidden throughout the asteroid belt. We've turned our entire solar system into a weapon. They think they're coming to conquer a primitive world. They're flying into a trap 3 decades in the making. Far beyond Neptune's orbit, hidden in the darkness between stars, Project Leviathan waited. The warship stretched 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull made from metals that shouldn't exist, forged in zero gravity using techniques humanity had developed in absolute secrecy. Its heart held 3 controlled singularities, miniature black holes spinning in perfect synchronization, generating power levels that violated half the known laws of physics. Commander Lisa Park floated through Leviathan's bridge, checking systems that had been checked 1,000 times before. Weapon status. Particle beam arrays online. Singularity torpedoes armed. Reality shear generators stable, her weapons officer reported. We could crack a moon in half if we needed to. Let's hope we don't need to. Park touched the captain's chair, knowing Cade would be here soon. Everything they'd built, everything they'd sacrificed, came down to the next few weeks. Her communications officer looked up suddenly. Commander, we're receiving updates from Earth. The Dravixian fleet just passed Saturn. 50 dreadnoughts, exactly as our intelligence predicted. Park smiled coldly. 50 dreadnoughts. They insult us with 50 ships. She opened a channel to the crew. All hands, this is the commander. The enemy approaches Earth with 50 ships. They believe this will be enough to break humanity. In 72 hours, we will teach them the cost of underestimating the human spirit. Prepare for history. In his throne room, Supreme Commander Vexhar received the latest reports from the Conquest Fleet. Earth had detected them, as expected. The humans were broadcasting messages asking for peaceful contact, for negotiation, for mercy. All according to pattern. They always begged at first. They always broke.